Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today is day 59 in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, and the fighting continues. And by some estimates, some analysis believe that the war could go on for well over the next year. And the question is that possible? Could Russia and Ukraine continue to fight for another 365 days? And I will say the answer to that is absolutely yes. We have seen it throughout history when large industrialized nations go to war, and even not so what you would define as industrialized nation. Iraq and Iran fought for many years, almost to a standstill, and that conflict ebbed and flowed. And in regards to Ukraine, especially with the amount of support that the Ukrainian state is receiving from countries like Poland, the United Kingdom, the United States, and a host of others, the ability for Ukraine to continue fighting is very much being propped up by those individual nation states and or alliances such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And obviously, Russia is a developed nation with a large industrial capacity that will be able to continue military operations for some time. Now, I know that some would say that because of the sanctions, that is going to limit Russia's capacity to build tanks and armored fighting vehicles and aircraft, especially high-tech instruments of war. While I would say, while it may cause some interruption in the Russian ability to produce military assets, I believe that China will then assist Russia in providing some of those much-needed supplies that the Russian Federation may in fact need to continue its war economy in this ongoing fight. But right now, just in terms of where we're at in the war, not a lot has changed, obviously, from yesterday. And for historical purposes, I'm trying to do this, one of these videos daily. So 10 years from now, if YouTube remains up and running, individuals can go back and see the war day by day and discussions about what was occurring in this conflict and how people felt about it. But right now, we are seeing the Ukrainians attempt various counterattacks within the vicinity of Kharkov, specifically to the southeast of Kharkov, or Kharkiv, however you would like to pronounce it. The Ukrainians have made gains to the southeast of Kharkiv and have pushed the Russians back in certain areas. And in all probability, that is going to cause the Russians to move forces from other areas, such as the continuation of its offensive operations near in the Donbass area, specifically directional attacks towards Sloviansk, Severodonetsk, and Kramatorsk. We'll probably see some of those units be repositioned to blunt some of these Ukrainian operations within the vicinity of Kharkov. But right now, I think a lot of observers are asking: is the Russian offensive stalled? Has it got off to the correct start in its operation to seize control and envelop areas such as Sloviansk and Kramatorsk? And it's very difficult to say at this point. Russian tempo of operations still continue. They are still using vast amounts of heavy artillery in this ongoing operation. We continue to see the Russians execute its tactical airstrikes against Ukrainian positions. but we've not seen a lot of actual Russian battalion tactical groups find a way to break out of some of these front line areas and start to maneuver, especially in the Ukrainian rear, if you could consider that the Ukrainians actually have a rear at this point, given the level of mobilization that we are in fact seeing from the Ukrainian side of the conflict. But on one hand, as an observer, you could say that the offensive is stalled, or you could say, quite possibly, that the offensive has never really started yet. And I would have to believe at this point the Russians are still preparing the battlefield for what it really wants to do next. Have we seen everything that is in the Russian capability be executed in this operation, especially in the Donbass? I'd have to say at this point, no, not as yet. The Russians still continue to prepare the battlefield, and quite frankly, this sort of methodical operation should have took place at the very beginning of the conflict, as opposed to this very high risk, high reward operation we observed to the west and east of the Dnieper River, and operations within the area near Sumy and Chernihiv as well. Again, that operation took significant amounts of Russian combat power to execute. Probably was not completely prepared for from a logistical aspect fully, and then obviously that operation did not go well. I understand that Russian supporters would say this was a big diversionary attack. I do not agree with that assessment. I think it was a legitimate attempt in light of with a possibility of low-level Ukrainian resistance. The Russians may have felt that there was an opportunity to seize Kiev. But unfortunately for the Russians, the Ukrainians fought, and probably fought more tenaciously than what was initially suspected. But right now, all eyes again continue to be on the southeast, within the area of operations, all the way running really from Zaporizhia all the way to just the south of Kharkov. That's this location. And I believe that the Russian army continues to prepare the battlefield, or the better verbiage would be the Russian armed forces continue to prepare the battlefield for its actual offensive operation. If in fact the Russian military is stalled and are not able to continue with this operation, especially the envelopment of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, and the eventual pocketing of some of these large amounts of Ukrainian forces in this area, then it is going to be very, very difficult for the Russians to continue on with some believed to be stated goals, and one of those goals could be the liberation or the conquest, however you want to look at it, of all territory east of the Dnieper River. And at the same time, you also have the possibility that the Russians are looking to secure a territory which would include Odessa all the way to the borders of Moldova. And you have to wonder, given the Russians are continuing to maintain a footprint on the western side of the Dnieper River, and are continuing to provide that area with both limited offensive and defensive, and more or less defensive capability at this point, to prevent a Ukrainian counterattack and seizing the city of Kherson. I think the Russians want to maintain a hold of that city, and in all likelihood will not be withdrawing from Kherson. And I think at some point we'll probably see, and again, if the operation in the Donbass is successful, we'll probably see continued operations towards quite possibly Mykolaiv. But ultimately, the the Russians are going to want to first try and secure all areas east of the Dnieper River. If the Russians walk away from this operation with what they have now, or maybe a bit more territory, say the entire region of Luhansk, and control Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, and are able to reduce and seize control of Severodonetsk, they're still going to be in basically the exact same strategic predicament as they were prior to the onset of hostilities. And not only that, in all probability, we will see the Ukrainians rearm and obtain even more capabilities than when the attack or the invasion or the war first started. It is going to be basically anything and everything that the Ukrainians can get their hands on once post hostilities commence. then obviously the United States and other EU nation states are going to deliver vast sums of armaments to Ukraine. And the reality is, this operation, at least from the Russian perspective, would be all for naught. It may hold some areas in the east. It may have given itself a bit more strategic depth, but the end game is still the same in terms of where Russia and Ukraine were sitting prior to the conflict and where they would be sitting after the conflict. And that's why I believe that Vladimir Putin and key leaders inside the Kremlin really have a operational plan in place, and that in all probability entails the complete occupation of all territory east of the Dnieper River. It would only make sense. And I think that is at a minimum, if they can actually take these areas from the Ukrainians. And that's why many folks and analysts are talking about an extended war, quite possibly taking in excess of over a year. You still have quite a few cities, even after Kramatorsk and Sloviansk are hypothetically taken. And as I talked about even before the war started, that it was going to be a major effort for the Russians to take a lot of these areas. And there continues to be a host of cities going forward that the Russians are going to have to encircle, attack, reduce, and take control over if it wants a successful outcome to its operation, especially in terms of why it launched this operation, and again, where it kind of sets 10, 20 years from now in terms of providing Russia this is from the Russian perception of having some sort of a strategic depth to defend the Russian nation state. If you go by some of the heartland theories and such that circulate out there, that supposedly Vladimir Putin tends to agree with. But right now, that's kind of where we sit. We continue to see very, very heavy fighting taking place. As this conflict wears on and the attention span of at least Western media becomes shorter and shorter, in all probability we will see less and less coverage of this. At the same time, I still believe there is a great risk of escalation occurring, especially in terms of when we continue to see the West continuing to provide vast amounts of combat equipment to the Ukrainians, and we continue to see the benefits of both that equipment and the ongoing intelligence and some of the quite possibly covert assistance that Western nations are providing to the Ukrainians as well. One other topic I wanted to touch on real quick before I sign off was the sinking of the Black Sea Fleet ship, the Moskva. It appears that after observing some photographs of the ship after being hit by those anti-ship weapon systems, the Neptune ASM, it would appear that the Russians would have had time to evacuate quite a significant number of members off that vessel. I talked about quite possibly that the vessel would have been hit and could have sank in minutes. Based on the photograph that I have seen, it does appear that the ship was hit by at least one anti-ship weapon system, and that caused the ship to sustain obviously extensive damage and the cook-off of further munitions on the vessel, leading the vessel to eventually sink. And it looks like the Russians were able to bring in a ship to help fight the fire, and at the same time bring in other ships that could have evacuated many of the crew members on board the ship. The Russians are now stating that up to 28 crewmen may have been lost in that cruise missile strike, on that anti-ship cruise missile strike on the Moskva. And based on what I have seen, that seems reasonable. Could it be higher than that? Could it be lower than that? Possibly. But at least from what I am seeing, it doesn't appear that the ship was hit and it went into a catastrophic series of explosions that would have killed the entire crew. It does look like the Russians would have had time to mount some sort of evacuation process, and the Russians are admitting that at least 27 crewmen are missing, and one was KI-8 at this point. So we're continuing to track that as well, because I think that is going to be a significant event, and I do believe at some point we could see the Russians strike back in some way. What that is going to look like, very hard to say at this point, but I would say it would quite possibly and obviously leave room for some plausible deniability for the Russians, but I do not believe that is going to go unanswered at this point. But that's kind of where we set for the day. We'll have more very, very soon. Appreciate everyone joining us, and have a good day, everybody.